Good afternoon, everybody. Hello.
Good afternoon.
Hello.
Good afternoon. Hello.
I hope you're all having a great day. This has been the summer for the ages, I think. So let us get started with today's meeting.
Direct service and the nature of which may have changed.
Who is that? Jack, is that your other phone? We hear?
The long
No, I have you all on mute.
I hear. No, you're not on mute. Okay, now I think you're okay. Okay, I can't seem to get this open, but we're gonna follow. Here we go, our standard agenda for chair's meeting with the report out, starting with finance. Councilmember Evans.
Yes, not much to report right now. I check in with Director of Finance tomorrow. We always do the Tuesday before committee meetings. But as you saw from the first passed legislation, we didn't have, I think we had one or two pieces, if that, nothing major really to report in terms of legislation this time around, unlike last month. So we really don't have much much on it so far. I don't know if anything's going to come as a tweener in between now and chair's meeting, but right now, as it stands, we got two things on the agenda.
Okay.
The other thing I'll mention, and I'll be talking to the Director of Finance about this. We still don't know in terms of what's going to happen with COVID Part 2 in terms of relief to municipalities and states. So stay tuned on that, because the state as well as the city as well as the county, we're waiting for some type of resolution in Washington as it relates to relief to local municipalities. But as you can see, as you probably heard, there's been no movement. So in the first bill, it had no information or no relief for state and local government. So we're still waiting on that.
Right. Okay. All right. Thank you. Councilmember Patterson.
So nothing too heavy this month. I would direct everybody to introductory number 301, which is pretty interesting. We'll be getting some more information on that. But other than that, it's a pretty light month.
I'm going to be reaching out to Commissioner Kirkmeyer about the status of processing the grants that were provided to businesses, following because I'm getting contacted from folks who say they've put in all their paperwork and they've done it repeatedly and they've still not received assistance. I reached out to him once before and he reported back they actually had hired extra people or something, but they were churning out. They were really churning them out. But I'll just try and get a status update. And I would imagine that a part of the other thing that's coming up is people who we're doing code enforcement, like for boarded windows and stuff. Not doing it for everybody, because I think some of the people whose windows are boarded are those who were injured, were damaged in May, and we're probably giving them a break, right? But we're not giving a break to the other people, so there's a little.
Well, there was a conversation earlier about reaching out to folks with boarded windows, businesses with boarded windows, and this was back early part of July, about saying, okay, we should uncover those windows coming up in that first week in August. So we're here now. And so I'm sure they've been reaching out to have to talk to some folks. I don't know where that conversation is yet, but I'm sure Gary will be happy to give you that update and get you that information. Or we can ask him, like I'm having a meeting on Wednesday, so we can ask that question and we can get you some feedback. Just want to write the email. But either way, I don't think that's unreasonable. And I do remember having some conversation about that earlier. About, it's time to uncover those windows. And one of the main reasons was an issue for the fire department. They need to be able to see into these buildings to see what's going on with them. And so that's kind of the concern too. It's like, okay, we had some troubles. We understand why you covered your windows. We've given you guys some time, but now it's time for that stuff to come off the windows. And, you know, there may well be some folks who kind of like it the way it is.
Yeah,
So
I think so. Okay. And also, since MBD seems to get the majority of the questions, are you all clear? And I haven't been able to respond to the mayor about the approach for contacting or getting questions answered from departments. I know we do get a lot, we go to police a lot, but MBD gets the bulk of them. Are you all clear about that process now?
We copy in the employee involved. Well, we adjust it to the employee involved and then copy in Commissioner Kirkmeyer. Is that right? I don't know. Did we get clarification on Daisy?
So I believe that the mayor's instruction is you send it to the person who it goes to, include myself and Josanne as the liaisons between two administration and the council, and then include the chief or commissioner, the head of whatever department it is. And then I think it would be incumbent on that department head to share with any other employees that he or she felt necessary.
Right. So are we all clear on that? Okay.
Yep.
works for me.
All righty. Thank you.
I had a question about school number 4. So with the, do we know if the tenants of those properties have been contacted?
We don't know anything yet, Mary. We haven't had a meeting.
Oh, okay, I missed that part.
Okay. All right, so we'll go to PPW. Where is Dr. Gruber? There he is.
Here I am. There's a couple things that I want to just point people's attention to. The first one is Introductory 312, which is bringing back bike share, but on top of bike share also scooter bikes as well, because they are legal now with the state. So
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Sorry, Mike, can you put yourself on mute? There's a lot of feedback from your section.
You're moving your papers around. That's causing noise. Okay, thank you.
So Introductory 312 is the reintroduction of bike share, but also e-scooters and e-bikes, because those things are now legalized by the state. And there's something that I think is really good about this, which is that the company, which is called Hopper, is the same company that RTS has hired to do, or contracted with to do this work in the suburban communities. So it's actually a great benefit, I think, in the end, to have one company that is doing the entire Monroe County, to have some more connective tissue with the whole system. I think that's wonderful. What I don't understand yet, and I'm having my meeting tomorrow with the department, is that there's nothing in here about costs. I know we were contributing quite a bit of money, well, not a huge amount, but I think something like $40,000 a year to Zagster when they were here. And I don't know if we're going to continue to do that. I think part of it is if the federal government will let us continue to pass through those dollars, because they were federal funds. But the other thing is that initially, and this is well before my time on council, the city had done a good deal of private fundraising to bring this company. And I think it was kind of done as a partnership between the company and the administration. They got money from places like Excelis and the Health Foundation and places like that. And I have no idea what the actual needs or costs are for this, but I intend to get to the bottom of that tomorrow. And, you know, I'd love to see at some point city council as a kind of unified whole being able to help with the, not necessarily the fundraising specifically, but with the kind of positive PR for a program like this, that it's something that we really want our companies to invest in and to sponsor sites, specifically ones that are in lower income neighborhoods, because that's always an issue with these programs across the country, is that you see more stations in places like the South Wedge than you would on Norton Street. And so, you know, we want to figure out how to address that. So any questions on 312 before I talk about the other thing? Okay. And so the other thing is in fact 314, 315, which is on the new neighborhood service center and substation in Beechwood. And I anticipate this being a fairly hot button issue. And what I will say is that the Beechwood Neighborhood Coalition has been very, very vocal and explicit about their design recommendations and thoughts and ideas. And I've encouraged Commissioner Jones and his team to make sure that they're responding to the things that are in fact up for debate and the things that are in fact set in stone, because that's just the requirements that come with such a facility. And we're making a little bit of progress. I got to be honest, Commissioner Jones told me this was going to be in the September legislation, so I thought we were going to have a little bit more time to work on it, because I really want the Beechwood neighborhood to, they've supported this all along the way, but I want them to be cheerleaders for it when push comes to shove. So that's just food for thought for everyone. And other than that, I don't have anything else to share, but my meeting is tomorrow and I'll report back.
Okay. You all probably know me to be kind of laid back and I don't get excited about a whole lot of things. But sometimes something just really, really irks me. When we went to inter Assemblyman Gant at Riverside Cemetery, when we passed through the gate and I looked at the flower bed underneath the flagpole, it made me go tilt, because it was the most, it was ragged, just unkempt. The perennials had died out and they were looking bad and there's nothing had been planted to replace them. They just looked just terrible. And I really was upset about that, because that is the front door to Riverside Cemetery. That is the gateway into that magnificent cemetery. So I did contact Commissioner Jones about it that same day, actually. And he assured me he would take care of it. And I was certain that he would. When I went down there, I went down Lake Avenue last week, and I did what some might classify as a U-turn. It was actually more like a K-turn kind of thing that I passed by, and I had to go back and say, Lord, do tell me that they still have not fixed that flower bed. And the Lord told me they did not fix it. It still looked the same way. I was really, really livid. So I called the commissioner again, and we had a nice heartfelt talk, and he asked me to contact Anthony, his deputy or assistant. And this was on a Saturday. So I did agree to call Anthony on Monday. And I called him and we talked. But my point is, I know that the things that I may get upset about and value are not necessarily shared by others, but I think that there are some things that we all should cherish, and that is the way that we, as a service provider, especially one where people are in some of the darkest days of their life, the least we can do is present a pleasant front. We're not Holy Sepulchre, who got money to have all these wonderful little flower beds and just wonderful gardening stuff, but we are, I told them all, growing up poor, you didn't have a lot, but what you had was clean and neat. So I'm sharing this with you because, Mitch, the commissioner may bring it up at your meeting, and I haven't been back down Lake Avenue, but I'd like for you to get for him assurances that it's been taken care of. I was told that it would be, but I have not gone back down there again yet. So if you would check in on that, I would greatly appreciate it.
I will. And I think one of the things that I've really been pushing and stressing since January, and of course we haven't had time because since the Bello administration came in, there's been a pandemic to deal with, but I really do think that we need to have a stronger connectivity between the parks departments and the county and the city, there's always been a lot of ambiguity from my perspective as to who is responsible for the upkeep, as to, you know, where in different places. And there's efficiencies to be gained. And I think we need to really start pushing for it. I remember, you know, and I'm sure VP Lightfoot will appreciate this, but there was Rock the Peace had an event at the corner of Portland and Roycroft probably 2 weeks ago. And Wanda Ridgway got there the day before to check it out. And she called me and she said, this place looks like garbage. And I remember I was with Commissioner Jones last year at that exact garden, Portland and Roycroft. And we did upkeep there, a mini clean sweep just to beautify it because there was a lot of stuff happening in the neighborhood. Well, meanwhile, now there's an important event coming up there, and there was no one who felt any level of accountability or responsibility to keep up with that vacant lot. And that's a problem that we're going to continue to have if there isn't some accountability and responsibility. So I'll bring it up tomorrow, and I hope we continue to figure out where the county can lean in and where we can lean in a little bit better to do a better job of all this.
Connect me with the county, any possible involvement with the county with the lot at Roycroft.
Well, not with that particular lot. But the county has the way that the parks departments get carved out, the responsibilities feels to me very arbitrary. There's some parks where it's, well, from this line over, it's the county, but from this line over, it's the city. And I just think there's efficiencies to be gained.
Okay, I don't think it's arbitrary though. I think it's a function of agreements that were established in the, I believe, 60s, when the county had more resources and the ability to gain more resources than the city. And those parks and the responsibility for same were turned over to the county. I don't think it's arbitrary at all.
Fair enough. Poor use of words, but the historian in me might argue that an agreement made in 1960 that nobody is around from anymore, no one knows why it was done, is a little bit arbitrary, and we ought to look back at those things.
Well, it's not expired. I mean, it has a term, and I mean that's something that can be looked at, but it does have a term, and it was something like, I don't know, 50 years or something like that. But if you want to do a little more research on it, that would be fine.
Yeah.
Well, let me push back on one thing about the neighborhood garden at the corner of.
I can't even hear
you. So let me push back a little bit on the characterization of the neighborhood garden in the corner of Portland and Roycroft.
You're breaking up. You're breaking up.
Okay. Can you hear me now better?
Not really.
Okay. Well, I'm just going to click through it. So look. One the day before, I contacted Commissioner Jones and they addressed the issue. So it's not in the park, it's the neighborhood garden. So responsibility for maintaining.
Unfortunately, nobody can hear what you're saying. It's just a lot of static.
Hang on a second. Don't go nowhere. How about now? Can you hear me yet?
Not yet.
Okay, well, I'm going to keep talking. Can you hear me now?
A little bit better.
All right, how about now?
No, can we
really.
just?
Okay, well, look, the responsibility for maintaining that neighborhood, the rest of the neighborhood, now with Commissioner Jones. So the fact that on short notice he was able to get over there.
Mike, call back in. Call back in and see if you can get another line or something.
The invite, Councilmember Patterson also has a dial-in option.
I mean, he's talking about the responsibility for who needs to control those lots. And I probably will agree with where he's going. The issue with the Portland and Roycroft garden is that there is not a community organization that currently rents or leases that space. So as long as there aren't places, it falls on the city's responsibility. It's our vacant lot. In other places, there are times where it's the responsibility of the nonprofit. It all depends.
Can you hear me now?
Say something else.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, so a little pushback on the community garden at the corner of Portland and Roycroft. So I got a phone call from Wanda that day too. I reached out to Commissioner Jones, and his crew went over there, and they pulled that little community garden together. It's not a park; it's a community garden. So the responsibility for maintaining the community garden rests with the community. Instead of giving Commissioner Jones and his folks a hard time about the status of a community garden, I think we should be commending them for realizing that there was a concern that was expressed by 2 council members and getting over there and addressing it.
Mike, I'm not giving Commissioner Jones or Karen a hard time. In fact, I do nothing but give them praise and congratulations for their ability to move on that quickly. But here's the problem. That is ultimately that. I guess I shouldn't speak with certainty about that lot, but I'm 99% sure. A community garden is only such if there is a permit holder. Like Thurston and Ravenwood, for example, that is the 19th Ward Neighborhood Association. They hold a permit on that space. They're then responsible for it. Portland and Roycroft, I was there with DES last year, and part of the problem is that whoever had previously run the garden there no longer does anymore. I know
Right.
A lot of other places too. Well, if nobody holds the permit to run the garden and it's a city vacant lot, then until the city makes another plan for it, it is the city's responsibility.
Well, I think you could make that argument, but if historically it has been a community garden, and for the longest, Anita Jones was the person who ran that community garden. A couple years ago, there was some issues and some concerns in the neighborhood when some other folks tried to do some maintenance in there. There was a whole lot of squawking, and it kind of fell between. So if you want to make, I don't know how, it is our lot, so I can agree with that. But then the question becomes, so once we grant somebody a permit to do a community garden, and then that permit falls through the wayside, does that mean then that the city now assumes the responsibility to maintain it as a community garden, or is their responsibility no more than what they would have to any other vacant lot? Yeah, I don't know if that question has been established. Well, I don't know if that question has been established. I don't know if that answer has been established.
Well, it's certainly not the city's responsibility to maintain any community gardens and to plant beds and to harvest fruit and vegetables from them. That's but it is the city's responsibility to maintain them. And I would say an even bigger responsibility to maintain the lot, aka mowing and things of that nature. I would say the bigger responsibility of the city, though, is, and this is something I want to work with the administration, is to really make sure that when something like that happens at Portland and Roycroft, how do we go out and find someone else who may want to help run that garden? So if the person who's running it forever moves out of town, we now have a community gardens coordinator in DES. She does a wonderful job. But is it on her work plan to say, okay, if Portland and Roycroft no longer has someone accountable for it anymore, we need to find someone else who will be? I don't believe that's on anyone's responsibility list, which in the end leads to a vacuum, which leads to the problem that I described when Wanda was having her event.
And I would say that in that case, that's a great conversation to have at your meeting. And sure, I think if you've got somebody whose responsibility it is to coordinate community gardens, then yeah, they should do that. And that was an instance where it fell through the wayside. But this is the first time we're really having this conversation about it. So my biggest concern was saying, hey, we haven't really had a conversation about this. We haven't really defined that role. You've done a great job of defining the role, the problem, and a potential solution to it. Let's go forward to it. But at the same time, since we really weren't aware of this as a huge issue, we do need to commend the commissioner and his crew for on short notice getting over there and addressing the problem. Now, if we're going to go forward and say, okay, we're going to expect the administration, we're going to hold the administration responsible for monitoring all of the community gardens and making sure that they're maintained to a standard, all well and good, but we haven't in the past.
Okay, so it's in your court, Mitch? Is that the idea? You're gonna
Indeed
ask if that is something that actually I would think that it's something that would be coordinated between MBD and DES. MBD knows the neighborhood players and who might be checked to see if they have an interest or desire in pulling together a group to maintain that community garden. In the absence of that, I would think that the conversation would be about converting the community garden to a vacant lot. So, I mean, I think the conversation needs to be had with DES and MBD.
Well, who has a responsibility for giving out the permits for the community gardens?
NBD.
Okay. Well, we'll take the we'll add that to our list, and we'll take the lead on that then.
Okay. All right. Thanks. Anything else, Mitch? Okay. Vice President.
Actually, before we move on, talk about 314. So I know that this project has been in the works for a while, but I just want to raise up that like we're in this new, mindset of, with our Racial Instructional Equity Commission, having a subcommittee looking at policing, and this, we're bonding for 12-point-something million, and that's a portion of it. It's a pretty big commitment to this, I don't know if I want to say style of policing, but just wondering if it's a little premature if we're talking about taking a look at, reimagining. This is a really big commitment to a building, and maybe it might be a good idea to wait until after the commission has returned, their findings on how we should move forward.
Okay. So we're on to PSYI.
Greetings, everyone. Peace and blessings to each and every one of you. So wonderful to see you guys again. I am meeting with Deputy Chief Simmons on tomorrow to go over specifics of the transmittals. I don't see anything in here that should be troubling or controversial in any way. However, I would draw people's attention to 321, which is a extremely long time coming, which is definitely our fire alerting system for the Rochester Fire Department, of course, with the upgrading of the county CAD system, which is over 30 years old, and the new installation and training with the new CAD system by Bricks. This is a long time coming project that has been in the works for quite some time, and is really, really going to be very beneficial to not only the fire department, but help to integrate communications across boards with public safety. So I'm very excited to see that this is finally going forward after many, many years, and I want to say many, many years of working to try to get this alerting system in place and the upgrading of the CAD system. Other than that, I really don't have much other than just FYI type of stuff. Want to thank President Scott I did receive my RAS letter, I think along with Dr. Gruber. Want to thank you for that recommendation and appointment to that commission. I look forward to serving with my colleague, Dr. Gruber, on that commission. I think we have our first orientation on the 10th of this month, which is in person, by the way. Also, I want to bring people's attention to the Pathways to Peace. I don't know if many are aware, but of course, Ray Malazis took a new position with My Brother's Keepers, and he has been, the new position has been filled by Pastor Cross, Melvin Cross, as well as Dr. Willis is working over at Dries. Hopefully, maybe BJ, we can have a work session on Pathways of Peace and their new employees and whatnot, and how they're looking to move forward, because they have kind of they're working on kind of a new vision and new direction for that whole Pathways of Peace. So I would hope that at some point we can get an update from them. Also, just an update, you guys, we voted not too long ago for forfeiture funds, the mobile trauma unit. It is in Rochester now. At one point, we were waiting. The facilities that was making and manufacturing it was shut down due to COVID. We have received the vehicle, the bus. It is being wrapped. It is beautiful. I can't wait for you guys to see the community response trauma crisis response unit that we will be launching very, very, very soon with clinicians. House with Clinicians was one of the things that many of our advocates have been asking for as we reimagine policing, as that was discussed just a few minutes ago. So that's in the works. That's a lot of conversation around that. We'll have more to be able to share with you around that, as well as there is a new position that you guys should bring your attention to, let individuals know. The Comprehensive Homicide Response Coordinator position is now posted on the city website. That is a position that has been birthed out of the Rock Against Gun Violence Coalition work that we have been doing, and we recognize a gap when it comes to homicide response and or crisis response, that we really didn't have anyone necessarily coordinating. We're coordinating different services, but not coordinating across networks and across partners, which is what work I've been doing for the last 3 years. That is really a full-time job. The mayor has graciously seen that she wanted to embed this work into DRIS. So this position, which is a temporary pilot position, will be housed in DRIS, and it's currently posted on the city employment website. And we're looking for a person to take this position as a comprehensive homicide response coordinator. All of the details of the position is listed on the in the actual job description. So that's pretty much all that I have. And I'll ask any questions if anybody has any.
Remember Vice President Lightfoot, was that in the budget? Was that position in the budget?
It was not. No, it probably will be, it would have to be something that will be brought back to us at some point, or they'll make adjustments. DRIS is responsible for, and the mayor is also working with, of course, our budget to allocate these funds.
Do we know how it's being paid for?
My understanding is that this will be out of the DRIS budget, if you will. And so my understanding is that's how that's going to be done. I think there's some positions that are not being filled, and I don't have the full details, but I can get them for you as they unfold. My understanding was that the commissioner was to go back and talk with Chris as well as where the funding would be coming from.
And Vice President Lightfoot, you said this position.
The only thing that's a little disconcerting, we're 1 month, we're just in the first month of this budget year. And we've got those kinds of changes, which could be significant. And I'm just wondering about the timing. Why was that not like considered, included, or, you know, planned for previously? I don't quite get it.
Well, I will say this, that we've been working for this for 3 years. My intent originally, I was looking at incorporating Rock Against Gun Violence Coalition as a 501c3. And then I would look to go for grants and look for external funding resources. When I took that idea to the mayor, she felt she wanted to go into a different direction, and that she wanted to have this work embedded into DRIS, because if we did a 501c3, oftentimes with those organizations, you only go as far as the CEO or the president of the organization. Once they're gone, then the dream, the idea is gone. And she felt that this was, especially with everything going on, we're at 22 homicides, ladies and gentlemen, in our city right now. We're averaging 1 homicide every 11 days. And we're up about 1 or 2 homicides from where we were last year. So we're seeing this uptick in violence within our community. And I really believe that the mayor and myself and all of those who've been doing this work just see a sense of urgency around making sure that we're doing all that we can to curb this violence within our community. So I would have to say that I would have to defer to our mayor as to, you know, she wanted to go in this direction. So this is the direction that we went in.
Yeah, it wasn't direction so much as timing that was puzzling me. That it seems well conceived and all of that. So we just we're just in the first month of our budget. So we would think that it would have been included, but okay.
Well, I would speak to that timing wise. We were working currently, as you guys heard me updating periodically about our coordinated homicide response plan. So we just finished the coordinated, Dr. DT helped me to put that together. So I think that I know that has a lot to do with the timing, because we just really completed that plan, that comprehensive plan. And as a result of that plan, the best practices of the research identified the fact that a coordinator, let's face it, most cities in our country, they have a office of gun prevention, mayor's office of gun prevention. In most of the cities that have high homicide rates and gun violence, we don't have such office in this city. And they average, for budgeting, they average $30,000 per homicide. So if we average 32 homicides a year, just do the math on what that office would have to be funded in order to run such an office. So my recommendation was not to have necessarily an Office of Gun Prevention, but at least since we had Pathways of Peace, we had some other partners, we had Rock Against Gun Violence Coalition, we needed a comprehensive homicide response plan because, quite frankly, to be honest with you, we've never had one. We've never addressed homicides to this degree that I'm talking about, addressing them with trauma-informed care, with more of a data-driven, more of a community-driven and victim and also the perpetrator response that we haven't had in the past. So that's, the plan just got done about, I don't know, I want to say a month ago. So that may be hence the time frame of why the coordinator position is moving in that direction now, because the mayor actually had something tangible to look at to make a decision.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Councilmember Evans, were you trying to say something?
No, I was just gonna say, could you remind me what the title position was called again?
Yes, the title of this position is posted as Comprehensive Homicide Response Coordinator Temporary.
Okay, got it.
58,734 to 77,444 annually.
Okay, all right, that's a mouthful. Okay, thanks. And I can get clarification too tomorrow. I can ask Chris about how it's paid for and that stuff too, if folks are interested.
Okay, thank you.
I would like to make this note that as prior to Rochester, oftentimes we're a little more ahead of the curve than most other cities. And what I would say is, when you look at the different advocates that have been advocating for different responses or different reimagining of and putting funds into different areas, we were already doing that. We were doing some of that work prior to the civil unrest. 3 years we've been working on this project. It took 3 years. So we're going to be able to unveil some things that have been demanded from advocates that we do, but without reimagining, we were already imagining, you know what I'm saying, a life like this in our city. Again, so it wasn't prompted by any civil unrest. This was because this was a need that we saw. We were proactive. We were trying to be proactive to address this particular concern and need, because I've had numerous calls of individuals some who have been talked to by agencies and some who have not. And so there was a disconnect across our city. And we're not Chicago, we're not New York City, we're not LA. And I'm saying that to say that 40 homicides, I wish there was 0, 30 to 40 homicides, but we're large enough where we should be able to handle 40 people or 40 situations. So that hence me, why are we having this gap? It's not like we're having hundreds of murders or thousands of murders, or where it's unmanageable. I think we could manage this in such a way, and all of the statistics show, as the advocates have stated out, that when you have these type of responses, that the statistics show that you curtail the violence within your community. So that's something that I just want to commend everyone who's been working on this and the support that I've been receiving, because again, this is a lot of this has been as a result of the need, not so much the civil unrest, but it aligns with what people have been asking us to do.
Okay.
Lightfoot, I'm really interested in learning more. Do you think it's something that's appropriate to do a work session on?
I just asked for that.
Oh, you did?
I did.
Sorry.
I just asked for BJ if we could get an update on Pathways of Peace and the new direction and all of the visions that they have. This sits on the drive.
No, I'm sorry. I mean the new position and the direction of the homicide response.
Sure, I think if you have drives come in and update on Pathways of Peace, again, since this falls on the drives, those questions will be germane to that conversation.
Agreed. Okay. Is that it, Vice President Lightfoot?
All I have, thank you.
Okay. So from our external boards, let's start with Councilmember Ortiz for Land Bank.
Hi, everybody. So, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. So I think there's not that much at this point, except for you should have all received the link for the upcoming Landlord Summit. That is something that's finally been rescheduled, and it is coming up. You have to pre-register. It will be virtual through Zoom, and there are, I think, 3 or 4 categories. Sorry. And that is something, if you're all interested in, you need to sign up, or if you want to just pass it along to others. It has certainly gone to our entire database of property owners. So right now that's kind of on the horizon, and it's a reschedule because prior to COVID, the first one got canceled for this year. So that's pretty much it in terms of what's happening. Obviously, if things continue to move forward the way they're supposed to, then we'll also have to be talking about refilling that particular seat as well for us.
Jackie, I'm wondering, we've not, in terms of hearing from landlords, we've engaged quite a bit with tenants about this whole upcoming eviction landslide and all of that, and even how we're doing the support, the activities that we've got going through Catholic Family Center. I don't hear a voice really with representing landlords. Will this be an opportunity for that as well?
So it certainly could be. There is more information being pushed out to them, but I know that there will be an opportunity for dialogue. The 3 main topics will be the temporary inspection protocol. It will be the certificate of occupancies, as well as virtual inspection guidelines is what they've laid out. They have information on the landlord reimbursement grant program, as well as COVID rent relief program. So there will be some opportunities here, but I don't know if it's specifically going to be about the housing situation per se, in terms of payment of rents and evictions and what have you. I will tell you this, as part of the Justice for All group, though, we do have landlords represented in that conversation that are on the meeting calls each time. So we do have the under one roof representation, and we also have another landlord group that's also on those calls on a regular basis, where we are specifically talking about the impending eviction situation and rent payments and getting geared up for court and all of those things. So they are certainly part of that conversation for sure.
Okay, great, thank you.
Yes.
Councilmember Gruber, the library board.
Sorry, the library is actually, today is the day that employees started to report back to work. And there's a plan being developed now to reopen some of the branches as early as next week. I don't know the specifics, the particulars about what the plan entails, and it's not like they're going to open up for regular business as usual, but they're going to begin to kind of slowly phase back. I think one of the big problems that we ought to think about as a council, though, is that there are some libraries, some of those buildings, I'm not going to mention in particular because I don't want to get it wrong is the only reason, but some of the buildings just don't have the appropriate ventilation to be able to reopen with COVID as it is. And so those are places where I really think we when we look at next year's CIP, we really ought to think about places that we want to prioritize there being some dollars put in. And in my mind, the branch libraries and ventilation, I can't think of anything more important than that.
Okay, thank you. DJ, you represent us on the transportation, Genesee, that thing.
Yes, so their previous meeting was canceled, but we do have one scheduled for Thursday. And I have not yet looked through the agenda packet. It's on my agenda to do this week, but I believe Commissioner Jones had said that there might be a city piece. I can provide an update next month after we've had that meeting.
Okay. Vice President Lightfoot, the youth board, Rochester Monroe County Youth Bureau Board.
Yeah, thank you, Madam President. I've been to 3 meetings so far. Of course, I remember sending you guys out information about the Willie Lightfoot Youth Awards. They're trying to plan that. They're going to do them virtually at one of the county ledge meetings is what their intent is. And they're planning that I think I want to say September, October timeframe. They're also putting trying to pivot themselves with this pandemic and figuring out ways that they can engage our youth during this pandemic. So the biggest thing was of course the awards that they do yearly. That's normally a huge event. That they were a little disappointed that they couldn't have the families come out, but they're going to do it virtually. And then they're also planning they want to do like a joint youth job fair with the county and city, first time ever. So we're working on what that may look like, more focusing a lot of attention on skilled trades and other opportunities other than college. And so that's something that I was very excited with. One of my recommendations, because oftentimes we just hear college, but we don't hear those other opportunities that are available to youth as well, which I think oftentimes are underrated and don't get enough attention, whether it's via military, the fire department, pathways, the safety program that Councilman Harris helps to run. There's other opportunities out there available to our youth, and they thought that was a good idea. That I was saying, I said, hey, why don't we work together and do a joint job fair? And so we're working on what that could look like virtually. Tremaine Harris from DRIVES is our lead person, working with them on that. And that was kind of it.
Good, thank you. Who am I missing? Video, I don't have the list.
You could do Mike with Redco.
Convention Center.
Okay.
Convention Center. Nothing new really to update. I mean, hopefully this COVID will pass soon because events have been canceled. Staff is laid off. It's a tough situation. That's the same update I know I gave last time. And we're also reviewing a consultant's report on the hotel across the street. The river, I forgot whatever it used to be called. I call it the old Radisson. So, but no, obviously convention centers have not been included in any of the governor's phase reopening. So they're working through that situation.
Okay. Councilmember Patterson, Redco. If you're talking, you're on mute.
You're right, I'm on mute. Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, just gotta check. Biggest thing is we've been updating the strategic plan. We have a subgroup that's been working on that. We should have that updated pretty soon, and we should be able to share, hopefully by our next meeting, we should be able to share that. Just standard, steady work.
Okay. Thank you. All right, we can go quickly to housing discussion. Is there any follow-up or questions from the session we had last week?
Yes, there's a document.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Councilmember.
No, I don't really have any questions, but I do want to just put on the table again that I would really, really want council to be vigilant about how things are going as we move through this process. Again, I know that the legal services seem to be okay with the seed funding, which is great, but it only gets them through about 6 months worth or so, because again, it's $200,000 short of the total they need for the first year pilot. So I know there was money put to the side. I guess I just put it on the table for council, please to be vigilant, and if necessary, advocate for the extra dollars if necessary, to make sure that that first year is a success.
Does anything have to come back to us between now and 6 months from now? So what I'm thinking of, do we want to put a measure into the legislation to require that they like submit a report or something about the funding status or direction or something, so that there's a window to act on moving additional money if necessary?
I think I don't think it currently exists in the transmittal in any way. I would totally be supportive of that, so that at least it gives us an opportunity for a status check. I think that would be great. Again, if we want this to work well, we just got to make sure that we're keeping track and that it's fully funded, at least for the first year. I think once it can show true results, which there have been studies upon studies about the impact that this type of program can have on the back end services, needing less of them. So I think that once they are able to show that here locally, that we'll have a better opportunity for more funding sources in the future.
Yeah. DJ, let's work on some language to get that legislation amended in order to require a report to council on a date certain, so that there also would be a window. Because the other thing is, you don't want them to get up to it and then run out of money and then have this gap, and then got to slow down startup and all of that.
Well,
So
I appreciate that, Jackie. My concern is less with the right to council. I mean, because they're not, again, part of the reason why we're not giving them the full 900,000 is because this is also to help out some of the suburban towns. So I think the county or those towns needs to chip in as well, which they're going to. But the other,
they are, but we remember we're 90% of the cases.
Sure, no, understood. But the other thing is that it's not like there's a fee for case, right? That's what they said explicitly, is that it's about hiring new staff and developing new systems. So I think that, there's enough money here for them to get going on that. I agree with you, we should get reports. The thing I want reports on even more detailed is about the Catholic Family Center dollars and the actual number of evictions that are being prevented with back pay, because it seemed like so many hoops for people to jump through and so many ways for the answer to be no. I'm not going to blame anyone or begrudge anything, but it did seem like there was a couple, I think it was Mark Muyo on the phone who said, there's a couple things where maybe we actually don't need a year lease. Let me look into it. I want to make sure we're being as flexible as we can, or if we're not being flexible because we can't be, that we know that we're not using the money.
that the year lease is a big one. That's major. But I didn't hear Mark say that. What I heard him say is that there may be sort of an alternative to it. He didn't say we didn't need it, but he said maybe there's a way to address it.
Yeah, he said, I think it was in the chat right at the very end. He said there's a chance, I think specifically because of COVID, that there's an opportunity that there might be some flexibility on that particular specific. So I just want to make sure that someone reports back to us and that we see that, holy crap, if in 3 months we only got 100 people through this program, well, then we better redeploy those dollars somewhere where it's going to make a bigger difference for people.
I'm not opposed to that tracking either. So, I mean, I think housing tracking with all of these care dollars that we recently approved. So I would be supportive of that as well. So if it was twofold in terms of status update, as well as the opportunity for flexibility for the right to access, it works for me.
Okay, I have a question. Do you think that not funding the positions for the whole year would impact their ability to quickly be able to hire someone, or however many positions this is supporting? Yeah,
so I think they have enough of a network, because a lot of this stuff also, some of these folks will be working pro bono. So I do think that they will have access to some of those folks, but I also want to make sure, just as Loretta had stated, I don't want to get them to a point where all of a sudden they're scrounging and trying to figure things out if nothing else has come through. So I think once they've made a commitment, they will figure out how to do it, but I also don't want to leave them high and dry if we don't have to.
And is the gap 190,000?
It's a gap, yeah, 190, because the county had agreed to about 150 is my understanding, and then obviously our 460, total 800, so that leaves a gap of about 190.
I guess I personally don't understand when we're setting aside, what is it, 2 million of the funds, why we can't just put the 190,000 in to fully fund it for the year. I personally don't get it. I think we should just make the commitment.
I don't disagree. I think, but I hear Gary when he said they want to be able to use as much of it as possible for actual rent relief. So I get it.
I hear that, but if people aren't able to access it, then.
I know. I guess that's why I said, let's see how it goes. but let's get that status check that Mitch and President Scott are talking about. Let's make sure we get it. That's my 2 cents for that.
And then we're also waiting on a document from Catholic Family Center that Councilmember Gruber requested that is a short synopsis of how people can access funds. And once that is made available, I will get that out to everyone.
Okay, going back a little bit. Well, we're running out of time. We didn't get an update on Peace Village, but maybe we can do that next month. What we're gonna need to do is go into executive session to discuss a personnel matter. I'm moving that. Is there a second?
Second, Madam President.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that motion carries. So BJ.
Okay, one moment.